In 3 words, I would say...
Would you say writing this novel took you longer than writing your average fiction piece?
Not really, because, this was inspired by true characters, but it was completely fiction. Like they were nothing like my parents. Their situation was nothing like my parents. So it wasn't like I took their story and, rewrote it. It literally, the casserole scene where he the first time is what happened between my mother and father when he for the first time. So that was basically the only scene that I didn't completely invent. And so I don't think it was harder in that sense or took any longer.
Hey besties, welcome back to my channel. Colleen Hoover has finally decided to speak up about the drama involving Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds, and the lawsuit against Justin Baldoni. And honestly, from everything we've seen so far, it really feels like Ryan is the one steering this whole situation. She's now doing interviews with Elle, and if you didn't know, she currently has a movie out in theaters called Regretting You. Even though critics absolutely dragged the film, it's sitting at a rough 28%. It still managed to earn $82 million at the box office. It hasn't been blowing up week by week, but it's climbed slowly, with $44 million coming from domestic sales. Now compare that to It Ends With Us, which pulled in $50 million in just its opening weekend. So yeah, Regretting You is performing lower, and the reviews are brutal, but Colleen is now stepping into the role of a filmmaker. This is the same woman who used to say in interviews that she was far too busy writing books to do anything else. Yet here she is, directing and producing films. When she was asked how involved she actually was on set and whether she ensured her vision stayed intact, she said, "I really wasn't super involved. I'm not going to lie. I don't want to take credit. I was on set for 1 to 2 weeks, mostly as a spectator. I was just there enjoying everything. Everyone who worked on the film brought their own talent and passion, and I didn't want to interfere. Maybe I would have stepped in if things went the wrong direction, but I never felt that way." But here's the thing. During the movie's promo run, she claimed she wasn't heavily involved, yet she still admitted she spent 1 to 2 weeks on set and had some level of participation. But she was adamant she wasn't a filmmaker. It's pretty rare for authors to jump straight into filmmaking. Most writers stay writers and let seasoned filmmakers handle the adaptations. But Colleen Hoover seems to enjoy stepping into the spotlight. And she also has a long history of bending the truth, which is just a nicer way of saying she lies. One example, the long-running narrative that It Ends With Us is based on her mother's real story. Except it's not. If you go way back to her early interviews when she first promoted the book, she flat out admitted it wasn't her mom's actual story. Yes, she said her mom inspired it, but she made it clear the plot isn't real. She literally said the only scene from the book that truly happened was the casserole moment. Everything else was completely fictional. So if Lily and Ryle aren't real, if the plot isn't her mom's real life, then her father wasn't a neurosurgeon, her mom wasn't a florist with a cute little shop, they never lived in Boston, and they didn't have some gorgeous penthouse. None of it happened. The entire book is made up. Sure, maybe she heard her mom tell a story once about the casserole incident, but that's the only part that ties back to reality. Everything else, the custody, the baby, the breakup, the whole Atlas storyline is fiction. She invented it. She's not a nonfiction writer. Being inspired by someone does not make it their life story. And honestly, it has always rubbed me the wrong way that she marketed the book as her mom's story, because if it truly was, it would feel incredibly exploitative to profit off your own mother's trauma. Also, Colleen herself has said she's been with the same partner since she was 16. They've had a healthy marriage, and she's never personally gone through any form of domestic violence. Honestly, I've been married to the guy I met at 16. We have 3 great kids. My life is boring. There's nothing personal in my life that would make a great book. I'd rather write what I enjoy. It Ends With Us was extremely difficult to write. But it's strange, isn't it? Someone who has never experienced DV becoming the voice of DV survivors. Maybe that's why the way she wrote it felt so inaccurate and out of touch for so many readers. So that's why I'm saying the book is not actually her mom's story. She's openly admitted that the story is basically fiction, like 99.9% made up. Yet she sold readers this emotional narrative that the book was based entirely on her mother's life. That's how clever marketing works. You build a story, you build a myth, and once that myth exists, it becomes the biggest selling point. In this case, the selling point was, this is my mom's real story. And now she's using her mother again, weaponizing her, claiming that both she and her mom are dealing with PTSD because of the lawsuits. What's even wilder is that she's implying the criticism happening right now is somehow more traumatic than what her mom went through with her father. Meanwhile, she isn't being sued. Her mom isn't being sued. Nobody is dragging her mother publicly. I have zero negative opinions about her mom. I don't even know her mother. But suggesting that any of this is more damaging than the real abuse her mom survived? That's another manufactured myth, and a manipulative one. She recently talked to Elle because her new movie Regretting You hit theaters. It's considered a sleeper hit with an $82 million box office. Still, that's way lower than what it ends with us earned, and it's barely over the break-even line. To break even, a movie generally needs to make about 2.5x its production cost. This film had a $30 million budget, and who knows how much was spent on marketing. If they put real money into the promo, the break-even number climbs even higher. This isn't a movie that's going to bring in an extra $50 million or $100 million for anyone involved. Now she says she feels embarrassed that she even wrote It Ends With Us, which is strange, right? Yet this is how she positions herself when people criticize the story for mishandling domestic violence or oversimplifying trauma. She claims she's fine with people calling out the book for portraying DV inaccurately. But based on her text messages, she didn't seem calm or accepting at all. Then she goes into her usual line. I respect that people have strong opinions, but I wouldn't change anything because this was my mother's lived experience. Except it wasn't. It wasn't her mother's lived experience. She literally said on video that the book was 99% fiction. She invented the story. The only thing that supposedly came from her mother's life was one casserole scene. One single scene. Her mom actually stayed with her father for years and had multiple children with him. So no, the book isn't her mother's story. She just uses her mom as emotional armor whenever criticism comes her way. Honestly, the more she speaks, the more she gives narcissist energy. She adds that she learned a lot from the criticism, but insists it doesn't change the fact that she was telling one woman's story. She claims she wasn't saying all abusers act the same, or all victims act the same, and that she clarified this in her author's note, saying she was simply trying to step into her mother's shoes. She describes her mother reading the book as a healing moment, but then says she wouldn't write the book today because she'd be too worried about backlash. But again, she already admitted the book wasn't her mother's story at all. Now she moves to the film drama. She's an executive producer and even has a writing credit. She now claims she was only on set for a few days and had no idea anything was going on between Blake, Ryan, and Justin. But that's strange, because she told Extra she was on set for 1 to 2 weeks. And the truth, she was actually there for around 2 weeks, and she documented everything inside her private Facebook group for her fans. This is her reshaping events. Again, the truth doesn't shift. Only lies do. And when someone keeps revising their timeline, it's because they're not telling the truth. Didn't she post a public statement praising Blake and talking about how brave she was for what she went through? Didn't her friend hint that if we knew what Justin did, we'd be shocked? And now suddenly she was completely unaware of any drama? This is someone desperately trying to separate herself from a mess she helped create. She calls the situation disappointing and circus-like, emphasizing that real people are involved who've been impacted in major ways, including actors whose careers took hits. She says it's all just sad. She claims she wants no part in extending the controversy and is carefully choosing her words. She says she wants distance from the negativity. She adds, I have my own story I could tell, but I won't. I don't want to put someone else down to lift myself up. I'd rather let people believe whatever they want. She says the situation is so far gone that nothing anyone says can change public opinion, especially since no one knows the actual truth, not even me. That's her favorite defense line. You don't know the truth. She told her fan group that for months. You don't know the truth. Now suddenly, even she doesn't know the truth? And she claims she doesn't want to throw anyone under the bus, but also claims she has her own story. Meanwhile, moments earlier she said she was completely unaware of anything happening on set. So which one is it? Were you unaware, or is there a whole story you could tell? For years, she swore she would never get into filmmaking. Now she's writing and producing movies. She said she wanted to stick to books, but now she's fully in Hollywood. Why? Because she saw the money. Books don't make the kind of profit that film adaptations do. That's just the truth. Even though she's had huge success in publishing, print sales decline every single year. Authors today don't sell what authors used to. Her last book, released in 2023, sold under 100,000 copies, about 75,000. That's not bad for an average author. Most writers can't even hit 5,000 copies. You need to sell 5,000 copies in a week just to touch the New York Times bestseller list. But still, 75,000 is nothing compared to It Ends With Us, which sold around 12 million. She's written 24 books, but the vast majority of her fame and income comes from one massive hit. The rest of her books have never come close to the sales of that one. She says what hurts her most is seeing how her mom feels. She insists the book was inspired by her mother's story, and now, thinking about everything that has happened supposedly gives them PTSD. She says she feels terrible because she believes her mom has suffered more emotional pain from the fallout of this film than she ever did while living with her dad and the very real abuse he caused. Hearing her say that is honestly disgusting. And if her mom truly feels that way, I don't understand how she could possibly believe a lawsuit is more painful than years of physical abuse, emotional manipulation, psychological trauma, and living in poverty. Colleen hasn't lost any money. Her mom wasn't even paid for this movie. Her mother isn't the target of any attacks. Yes, lawsuits exist around the film, but none of that has dragged her mom into anything. Colleen built this entire narrative by turning her mother into the myth behind the book, first claiming, "This is my mom's story," then shifting to, "It was inspired by her mom." And if her mom is hurting emotionally, I genuinely feel bad for her. But the blame would fall directly on Colleen and Blake. First, because Colleen lied and told everyone the book was her mother's true story. Second, because she teamed up with Blake to take the film away from Justin. And third, because now she's trying to hide behind her mother's trauma and claim that a lawsuit is somehow worse than the actual abuse her mom survived. To me, that tells you everything about how little Colleen actually understands domestic violence. Criticism, legal conflicts, and internet backlash are not remotely comparable to the physical, psychological, and narcissistic abuse that DV victims endure. Then she talks about how she feels about what she calls her most personal novel. She claims she can't even recommend it anymore because the lawsuit has overshadowed everything. She even says she feels embarrassed to admit she wrote it. When people ask her what she does for a living, she says she just responds with, "I'm a writer. Please don't ask me what I wrote." She hopes that once the trial is over, she'll feel differently. She says time makes things easier for everyone. But she still calls it sad because she truly is proud of the book. She's just not proud of it publicly right now. She jokes that maybe she needs therapy. But how can she claim PTSD if she has never been to therapy? Does she even understand what PTSD actually is? Post-traumatic stress disorder is a clinically diagnosed condition, something I myself have been diagnosed with as a rape survivor. You do not casually toss around the term PTSD without a proper diagnosis. She admits she's never gone to therapy. If you have PTSD, you struggle with triggers. You experience dissociation. You can't sleep. You deal with rage, fear, panic, sadness, overwhelm. None of this is what she's displayed publicly. Instead, she's been making movies, smiling at events, and acting like everything in her world is perfect. It's sad that she would weaponize trauma like this, but honestly, are we surprised given everything else we've learned? This is the same woman who lied to Justin in texts and claimed she didn't unfollow him because of him, but because of Blake, or because of her own personal issues. She lied about not being involved in the film. She lied about not contributing to the script. She lied about not even being allowed to see the script. She publicly supported Blake, saying, "You've been through so much," but now suddenly she claims she had no idea anything was happening on set. She told Justin she had her own issues with him, then turned around and said she was completely unaware of what was going on. Then she follows it with, "I don't want to throw anyone under the bus, but I have my own stories I could tell." Colleen Hoover is now officially a filmmaker. She has her own production company. And apparently she's too busy to write now, which is why her next book coming out in January will be the first book she's written in 3 years. She claims she simply doesn't have time because she's producing movies. Think about this. There are authors who have had dozens of their books turned into movies, and they never became film producers. They never opened production companies. They stayed authors. Let me give you examples. Stephen King is the most adapted author of all time. He has only ever directed one film, Maximum Overdrive in 1986. More than 30 other movies based on his books were made without him being involved behind the camera. Nicholas Sparks, The Notebook, Dear John, A Walk to Remember, Message in a Bottle, 11 adaptations. He never formed a production company. John Grisham, The Firm, The Client, The Pelican Brief, A Time to Kill, Runaway Jury, 9 huge films. He never became a filmmaker. J.K. Rowling, 9 movies from her books. She never directed any film. She didn't create a production company to control the movies either. What Colleen is doing is unprecedented, but not because she's innovative. It's because she wants control. Authors write. Filmmakers make films. She wants to be both. And I think what's happening is simple. Print media is dying. Book sales aren't what they used to be. Journalism is dying. Newspapers are dying. The entire print world is shrinking. And when you self-publish like Colleen does, you only make big money if you sell millions of copies. Because books alone don't bring Hollywood-level money, she's moved into filmmaking. She's a self-published author who wants total control, just like she's now a filmmaker who wants creative control. And now she's spinning the situation, a situation she helped create by assisting Blake in taking a movie from Justin, just so she could get the version she wanted. Even though the film turned out nothing like the book, she's still using domestic violence as a shield and her mother as cover. She's lying, seeking pity, and playing the victim. In my opinion, Colleen Hoover is just as bad as Blake, just as opportunistic, just as manipulative, and just as willing to put money above everything else. And PTSD? No. There is no PTSD here. There is no PTSD for trauma you caused through your own decisions. And she needs to stop dragging her mother into this narrative. Her mother has nothing to do with the mess Colleen created. Colleen did that. She's still lying about Justin. She claims she isn't choosing sides, yet everything she says shows she's still favoring Blake and acting like she's the one who's been wronged. What do you think? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to give this video a like, subscribe if you haven't yet, and hit the bell so you never miss a new upload. Thanks for watching. Bye, besties.